Are we in the middle of the best recruiting run in Auburn history?
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first or second listen every single day, as this is a happy hour edition. Locked On Auburn is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I jumped on Auburn Opelika this morning with our good friend Ben Taylor. We talk about what everybody can't stop talking about, and that's Auburn recruiting.
Big Cat Weekend, and Zach, I'm going to ask you this because you have seen it through the years, following recruiting, following Auburn football, being part of Locked On. Is this the best element to put Hugh Freeze in, where you bring a bunch of people home and start talking to them and allow him to recruit? I mean, I know it takes a whole village to do it, but It seems like other coaches and programs are scared of players coming to an event like Big Cat Weekend.
Well, I mean, so many came and then so many committed, and it seems like it set up commitments for guys in the future. I mean, we've already seen guys who were there that didn't commit over the weekend commit. I mean, Fagan's, his announcement was already set. You know, he was going to commit Monday night. You know, he said that like 2 or 3 months ago, it seems like. But Derek Smith, which is, you know, a guy that we kind of expected to flip over the course of the weekend, and instead we got Antonio Coleman who flipped, which is fine. I'll take that too. But, you know, it's just, not only did they get several guys to commit over the course of the weekend, but it set up other dudes. I mean, Naheem Offord is a guy who is probably the highest rated player there. It's like, okay, there's starting to be more and more smoke. In fact, they dropped, it was Brian Matthews dropped a nugget on one of y'all's shows over there at the Auburn Network, saying that Offord was certainly a name to watch. I think he said that when he appeared on The Drive earlier this week. And, you know, Tyler Lockhart, there's a lot of smoke with him. It's an incredible run. And I don't think we've ever seen this before, Ben.
I have not. I mean, it is, and I've been watching Auburn football since the 80s, been involved in Auburn football when I came to school in the mid-90s, as far as trying to work with the program, volunteered in sports information, all that kind of good stuff. And so you're following, you know, various parts. So even, and I think that one journalist said this that even covered the Dye years. I forgot who it was that said it. I think maybe he got, if you had 10 top 10 players in the state of Alabama, he maybe got 5 on some of his best years. And you've got Hugh Freeze going out and getting 10 out of 10. And you look at the 2026 class, this is hard to fathom. And I hate to be the person that compares us to Alabama and compares Auburn to Alabama, but Alabama has more recruits out of the state of California than they do the state of Alabama in 2026.
Yeah, which is that sustainable? I don't know. I mean, if you're able to do that for forever, I think that's fine. You can win that way. I think it's just nobody's done it. Nobody's done it. And it's like, if that was a better option, I just feel like Nick Saban would have done that. You know what I mean? Yeah, Auburn's in a great spot to get 7 of the top 8 players in the state because, I mean, it seems like the offered smoke is very, very real.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would leave Zion Grady, who's committed to Ohio State, that was here this past weekend, as the only player that's not committed to Auburn when you look at the top 8 players in the state of Alabama. And then the top 8 players in the 2026 class were all here this past weekend. And Auburn is projected to win 7 of the 8 of them right now. They're red hot, Ben. And like for folks, because I hear this from time to time that like momentum isn't a real thing. I don't know how you can look at what Auburn's doing right now and say momentum is not real.
And I think it carries over to other programs too. I mean, it is something where they kind of feed off of one another because other kids, let's just call it what it is, even kids that play soccer or that play softball or that play baseball, see the fun time that recruits are having on a Big Cat weekend, and they want to be a part of that culture as well. I mean, because it is, you've seen it in other programs. And I talked to Andy Burcham a little bit. There's my flex on you, by the way. Talked to Andy Burcham earlier.
Andy Burcham, the GOAT.
I talked to Andy Burcham earlier this week, and I was asking him about them doing that ambush out in Texas. And, when you got Hugh Freeze and Bruce Pearl and national champion Nick Kleiner that step off of a plane and walk in to take questions from an alumni group that, let's just call it what it is, Zach, they don't get to see those coaches like you and I get to see them down in downtown Auburn walking around with their families. This is the one and only time they do. So they're kind of awestruck a little bit when that happens.
Yeah. And they did a great job putting on that event. Daryl and I were out there when we were there for SEC Media Days. And so it was cool to talk to some of the coaches out there. But yeah, it's a movement right now with what Auburn is doing. And we saw Hugh Freeze do this at Ole Miss. Now he's doing it at Auburn. And this is the kind of thing where we should have picked up on this earlier with the Brian Harsin situation. But with these coaches that get hired, and there's a lot of smoke and there's a lot of energy, Sark at Texas, Saban at Bama, so far DeBoer at Bama. We'll see what happens if he can kind of get some stuff going in state or not. But you see these little movements when it comes to acquiring talent and just overall excitement around the program. It's like, okay, we did a restart. The guy leading our program, we're so excited to rally behind him. Auburn didn't get that recruiting bump when they hired Harsin. And I think there was a little bit of one when they got Gus. Now, obviously, going to a national championship in your first year helps with that. But it's just what they're doing, we've never seen before at Auburn. Ever. I mean, what's happened in the last 10 days and what I think is going to happen in the next 10 days is unprecedented. And we will be talking about this a decade from now.
Practice begins this week. I have been on the positive side of Peyton Thorne going into this year. I just, for some reason, think when you go through year two and it seems like Hugh Freeze is spending more time probably in the quarterback room, OTAs where they've been working out with receivers, even Hugh saying it in some of his press conferences where somebody even asked him, is there any concern with Perry Thompson? He said, no, because he's a super freak. So there's not, as long as he can get his routes down, I mean, he's going to be there. But I've been plus Peyton Thorne. Am I dreaming about that? Am I a little too positive on him?
I mean, everything's lining up for it to be better. And the beautiful thing about this, and this is why I love the way the coaching staff is kind of constructed this offseason, is they've made it where it's not about Peyton Thorne. Obviously, he's the quarterback, and if you're going to go overachieve this season, you need him to be better than he was a year ago. But he could probably be as good as he was a year ago, but with better play calling and better players and around them and better options to throw to. I mean, just naturally, he's going to improve as a passer, even if he doesn't get better. And I mean, that's just kind of, the logic behind it. And so, I don't know, towards the latter half of SEC Media Days, just talking to folks, it's like people started to come around on the idea of are we too low on Peyton Thorne? I've seen several folks that rank all of the starting quarterbacks or the projected starting quarterbacks in the SEC. I've seen Peyton be as low as 16 and as high as 10. I haven't seen him anywhere higher than that. So it's like they're starting to think about it and at least ask the question, are we too low on Peyton Thorne? But nobody's quite ready to pull the trigger and come out and say, hey, we as a group of media are too low on Peyton Thorne. I don't think he's 16th. 10 seems about right to me, but he's got the potential to jump into the top half if he just does what he's supposed to do in this Hugh Freeze offense.
Okay, that's the sexy version. We talk Peyton Thorne, we talk receivers. Touch on the running backs just a little bit because you got Jacquez that's going to be back there. However, let's talk about the other side of the football, and I think some people have some concerns defensively and what Auburn can expect to see on the field this year in order to protect some of those possible leads that the offense may put up.
Yeah. So that's coming up right here on this special edition of Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Factor. Ben, can you imagine spending more than 2 minutes prepping a meal? Can you imagine that?
Yes.
No, you can't. No, you can't. Warmer, sunnier days are calling. Fuel up for them with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. And you can, they've got all sorts of different options. Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto. You did keto for a little bit, right? Am I making that up?
I was more of the calorie deficit one, so I'd probably be on that one.
Yeah, got it. That's. I'm planning on ordering this next week, and I think I'm gonna do the Calorie Smart one for sure. They've got 35 different meals with more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week. You always have new flavors to explore. Ben, you like flavor. I like flavor. We all like flavor. Make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. Stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. Head to factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 and use code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Ben, there's a lot to be excited about, as you hinted at, on the defensive side of the ball, but there are concerns to me. And to me, the questions are along the defensive front. And they've got a lot of role players that they brought in, a lot of guys who've played a ton of college football, which is exciting. But they're in a similar situation. I talked to somebody within the program about this probably about a month ago at this point. Like, how do we feel about the D-line? And they're like, honestly, we feel the same right now as we did a year ago about the defensive line. There were a ton of questions, but Marcus Harris stepped up, and we just didn't see that coming because it sounds like he didn't do that in practice. He was a guy when the lights came on, he just lit it up and was unblockable. They need somebody like that to step up this year. And it's just interesting because so many of these guys have played for so long where it's like, is this going to be the year where that flip switches? Could be a change of scenery that prompts it. It could be, just new coaching with whether it's the new defensive coordinator with Durkin or the new defensive line coach with Vontrell King-Williams. I don't know, but something has to switch. A flip has to switch for one of these older veteran defensive linemen for this group to be where it needs to be, in my opinion.
You hear a lot of high praise from previous players about Durkin, and it's almost like they say he can help change a culture. So I do wonder from a defensive line standpoint, and then you talk about some of the disparity there, but you've mentioned, aren't you high on the defensive backs, or we don't know on the defensive backs?
Love the defensive
and
backs.
Linebackers?
Love the defensive backs. Yeah, I mean, Kayin Lee is going to be great. Keontae Scott is proven. Curious to see, that full transition outside corner, but I think it's going to be fine. And then Jaron Thompson, I think, won a lot of people over the spring, and he looked exceptional in the A-Day game. So, yeah, I feel pretty good about that. Sylvester Smith, I said at the start of the offseason that Sylvester Smith is going to be the player that wins the offseason for Auburn. And I may be right on that. I mean, it sounds like he's going to be a starter. It sounds like he's ascended. Talked to somebody, some scout or one specific scout down in Mobile for the Senior Bowl, and I'm like, give me an Auburn player that you guys are already paying attention to, and without skipping a beat, Sylvester Smith, the safety. So I mean, it's NFL teams are already aware of him. He's Sylvester Smith, kind of leading that safety group too. Champ Anthony is a guy that the coaches just continue to give more reps and attention to. Yeah, I think the defensive back room is going to be great.
And then we move up to linebackers. I mean, we saw Eugene Asante. He was at SEC Media Days. I mean, we know he's going to bring the energy. But do we know if he's going to be an every down guy that can basically lead the pack to stop the run?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to have to. And we've seen him do that similar role already, just with what he did last season and really ascended. And he was kind of thrust into that role early on because of Austin Keys' injury. And so we probably had to take on a larger role than he originally had to. But he wore it well. I mean, he was able to support that. But Eugene Asante, Dori Mayusi, the transfer from Duke, he talked highly of him at SEC Media Days. Banaje Gote, that they just added from Maryland. Curious to see how he fits into the puzzle. And then obviously we just mentioned Austin Keys, who played for Durkin before and is very excited to play for him again. So it's an old group, Ben. And it's just kind of interesting, the dynamic of, okay, there's all these older guys with 1 year left of eligibility. And then you've got these young guys with DeMarcus Riddick and DJ Barber, who I don't think are going to get a ton of playing time, but I think they're going to ease them in a little bit because they're going to have to probably start next year. And then Robert Woodyard's kind of right in the middle, is that lone guy that's kind of not a freshman and not a senior.
Not being a sunshine pumper here, and we're talking about all the great things that Auburn has got as far as defensively, offensively, all the pluses that they have.
Yeah.
Some of the deficiencies that they have is what's going to lead to, I think fans need to kind of wrap their head around that we're still looking at 8 wins as a good season for this team, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, are people saying otherwise?
I think with the momentum that you see from, I don't think a lot of fans don't put 2 and 2 together that recruits that come in on Big Cat Weekend will not be suiting up in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it
and
is
so
tricky. Yeah, because there's so much excitement and
Right.
and momentum, but it doesn't impact this season. Yeah, it is a weird dynamic there. Sure.
And so, you see some chatter and you see people talk about, oh, there's a 9, maybe 10 wins. And I'm thinking, okay, let's hold up here. I mean, they're still got to face a very good Alabama team. We sat there and I poked holes at Kalen DeBoer not having a 2026 recruit from the state of Alabama, as opposed to state of California. But let's keep in mind, he's still got some horses in the stable over at Alabama. You got Georgia, who until somebody knocks them off, they, to me, are still going to be the best team in football. And we'll see them soon, mid-season. So there's a couple of things when you look at it, because you got to look at the schedule and you think, okay, what are gimme wins? And I don't think there's 8 gimmies. I think they're going to have to earn a couple of those, and then maybe surprise somebody in order to get to 9. But it's going to take a shocker or something that. And I will say, I've said this every year except the Harsin years where I was completely off base on that.
Sure, a lot of us
Auburn.
were.
Yeah, Auburn usually surprises a team. Last year, I thought it was going to be Georgia, but then they just gave way late, and Georgia was able to come back. But still, they surprised 8. Thought it was going to be Alabama, and then you saw what happened there at the end of the ball game. They surprise a team every year. Who will that team be this year?
Yeah, is it Oklahoma? Is it Texas A&M? Is it somebody that play on the road? We'll see. You've mentioned Alabama's 2026 class a few times. I just want to clarify. They've got 1 player committed in 2026. His name is Dorian Barney, which is a great name. He's a corner from WANI, Georgia. So I just wanted to put that out there. So, yeah, I mean, Auburn has definitely emphasized the future classes more than Alabama so far, which is refreshing and exciting to see.
Any expectations coming out of practice now that this is their first week of being out there? I mean, they're not going to – I mean, right now it's all about getting in shape and making sure you wear the helmet and get your neck strong and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, just kind of getting back in the swing of things. It's interesting because there's not any major position battles. There are, I think, for the 2 deep, like who's going to be, the second string offensive line or who may be battling for more snaps in the defensive backfield at safety or at corner or something like that. But there's not a whole lot. I can't think of a starting position battle outside of maybe wide receiver, but I mean, I think that's set, but that might technically be a battle. There's a running back battle happening. Who's going to be the guy after Jarquez Hunter, probably between Jeremiah Cobb and Damari Austin. But the starters pretty much seem to be set. I'm curious to see how they handle those battles. Like, do they rotate in some of these depth guys that are going to be rotation pieces? Do they let them get more snaps with the 1s just to see what that looks like? Or do they go head to head with the 2s? I'm curious to see what all goes into that. But it's a pretty straightforward roster situation for Auburn going into fall, which is kind of nice.
The running back room is the one that's interesting to me because you mentioned Jeremiah. I think he can get a lot of yards at the end of a ball game because of him being a little bit thumper, a little bit faster than people realize. And after a defense maybe gets worn down by Hunter and Austin, but then again, if Cobb and Austin are going back and forth, we may see him earlier than the 3rd quarter or the 4th quarter.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different things you could do with the running back room. And I think you feel good about any option that you have. I mean, even if Jarquez Hunter, God forbid, something happened to him and he misses the second half of a game or something, you feel good about what Cobb and Austin can do and what the scheme can do operationally within it. And obviously, you trust Peyton Thorne as a runner too to help supplement that run game if something were to happen to any of these backs. So, running back is not anything I'm worried about with this team. That's for sure.
Be happy with 8 wins, everybody. I will be, but you never know. We may sneak up and grab somebody and get that 9 or 10.
Yeah, that'd be huge. That'd be huge. Ben, if folks want to check out more stuff from you, how can they find everything you've got going on?
Locally on radio, it is News Talk WANI, 1400 AM, 98.7 FM. You can catch me online if you want to listen to golf on Dad Bod, Golf Pod, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Probably the best place to go because then you can see me and Charlie Five chop it up a little bit about that. And of course, Braves Today, as you can go to YouTube, just search Braves Today. That will pop up, or Inside Baseball. It's pretty awesome as we've got a bunch of podcasts that you can see. A friend of yours, Lindsey Crosby, is on as well.
That's right. Yeah, be sure to check out those guys. Good folks over there. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We will see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.